name's Kenny, and I'm going to show you how to smoke baby back ribs using the 3-2-1 method. But before we do that, we're going to prep it, which is probably the most important part, and getting it all cut up properly. I'm using a baby back rib, which isn't as much prep as needed as much as the spare ribs, but with the baby back, you still have a couple of steps you have to do before cooking. The night before, I like to get all this done and put my rub on, so that way it seasons the meat and it comes out really well. So I'll show you guys how to take off the membrane with a couple easy tricks. This is a pretty easy process. Pulling the membrane out sucks tremendously, but what you want to do is try to find the bone, and with a basic butter knife you want to get underneath here and put your butter knife underneath and twist it to where the non-sharp edge is up. And what you're going to do is you're working that membrane off. Slide your finger underneath and start pulling the membrane. Once you do that, now your ribs are ready for dry rub. Now that I have the membrane all pulled off and ready to go, it's going to help my ribs stay nice and tender. I need to trim up the fat and some of the extra meat up top. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to get this extra piece of meat. I don't know the technical name of it, so I'm just going to cut it off. All I know it's really good when I cook it on the grill. For 6 hours of smoking, I need some food to kind of tie me over. So what I do is I cut this off, and on my little Weber, I cook that for myself, my son, whoever's helping me out, my dog, and we eat that. It's good eating. So I know there's a technical name for it, I really don't know it right now. And then what I'm going to do is kind of trim up some of this fat. Not all of it. I like the fat to give some extra flavor with inside the meat as it cooks, but if you have too much, it can get charred and give you a really funky taste, and we don't want that. So I'm going to start trimming the fat off. I have my meat all trimmed up, membrane off. Now it's time for the fun part, and that's putting on the dry rub. I can't tell you what my dry rub is, but I love to combine my spices and everything else inside of a blender. It gets it really nice and fine, and that way when I apply it, I can be very generous with it, which I recommend everyone to do. Don't be stingy with it, and the best ingredient is love. So put some love into it, rub your meat nice and tenderly, and whatever else you want to do with it, but just apply it all over up top and underneath on the back side. And this is going to cook nice and well during the 6 hours of smoking. And some of this will burn up and get crispy, but it'll give it an overall very good taste. I like to use saran wrap when I refrigerate my meat overnight. I don't like to use foil. It can give it a very metallic taste. So what I'll do next is, after I apply my rub, and I'll wrap it in saran wrap and then put it in the fridge overnight. That way everything's seasoned and good to go first thing in the morning to start my ribs. So once you think you got enough on, I think we're good. Rub it off a little bit longer. Get inside the cracks. She's good to be wrapped up, put in the fridge. So this is the first step, and next I'll see you guys tomorrow morning and we'll start the cooking process. Before I start up the smoker and get it ready and up to temperature, what I like to do is I like to have my meat sit out and get to room temperature. This will help with tenderness, and what it prevents is any type of shock to the meat if it's too cold when you put it on the grill. So leave it out for about an hour, and it'll help out with a nice tender rib. So here are my heat sources. On the left, I am using a Kingsford briquette that's not flavored. I know in competitions they frown upon this and using the lighter fluid because they say it messes up the profile. I've won first place in ribs using this method, so I'm going to stick with it. Sometimes I do like to use an oak chunk, which gives it a nice base, but it just depends on what type of flavor you want. So next is my flavored wood. Today I'm using apple chunks. You can buy these at Home Depot or an Orchard, Walmart also, but I soak them in water. That way they're nice and saturated. They won't burn as fast and give a good decent amount of smoke for the first couple hours. Here's Old Faithful, as I like to call her. I have a couple smokers, but this is my favorite. She's consistent every time. I've had her for 12 years, and I have it set up exactly how I want it. So what I like to do is keep all the doors open, all the vents and chimneys and everything open when I'm lighting my briquettes. I keep my briquettes all the way to the left near the opening, so that way the wind hits it immediately and it gives it a nice even heat and heats up all my briquettes a little bit faster. And when I spray on my lighter fluid, what I like to do is I like to let it sit for about 5 to 10 minutes. That way it saturates it and it prevents any type of burning off of the fluid. And I've had that happen before. You put your lighter fluid on, you throw your match on, and then everything burns off and you have cold coals. So, and then on the main chamber, what I like to do is put lighter fluid on here and burn off any excess meat or leftovers from the previous festivity. Now that we're ready to go, briquettes are all white. Now it's time to put the meat on and let our smoker go to 225. That's what we want to cook at for the entire process, is 225 degrees, and we're looking for an internal temperature of 145 degrees. Once we reach that, we'll pull the meat off. But in between that, there's a lot of steps that we have to take. That's why it's called the 3-2-1 method. 3 hours of smoking, 2 hours of wrapped in foil with butter, brown sugar, and apple juice, and then the last hour is with a light coat of barbecue sauce on it. So we'll come back in 3 hours and wrap it up in some foil. Now I've pulled the ribs off and I'm going to put them in foil. I put brown sugar down on the bottom with 3 cubes of butter, and then I'm going to pour apple juice on it and then enclose it and put it back on the grill. Put your ribs face down, and then with the foil, kind of make it like a little tray. Get your apple juice. There's no right amount, just whatever you think you want. And what'll happen, this will steam inside the smoker and help season and break down the meat, make it nice and tender. They're ready to go. So I put the racks on the smoker, and I'm going to leave them like this facing down for 2 hours. This is the 2 part of the 3-2-1 method. Alright, and keep it around 225, 250. Final step, we're going to add a little bit of sweet flavor to it, and before you put it on for the last hour of the 3-2-1 method, you want to give it some honey, which will give it a nice glaze. Just pour it right down the center of it and rub it on the entire top part. Give it some loving, that's what I like to say. Once you've done that, you can get your barbecue sauce and do the same. Just a light coat, nothing major to drown it out. But I just like to do this to give a little bit of a flavor. So a lot of people like to pour a lot of barbecue sauce on to hide a crappy rib, but what I'm doing is just giving it a little bit extra flavor in its profile. So, and that's it. What we'll do is we'll put this back on the grill or the smoker for an hour, and then I'm going to put a thermometer inside of there. And what I'll do is once I get about 145 degrees, I'm going to pull it off and let it sit for 15 minutes, and then we'll start cutting it up. But from now on, I'm going to go off internal temperature. So once it hits 145, I know the meat's ready and good to go. The ribs are done. They've reached temperature, but to double check, you want to ensure that the meat's a 1/4 inch from the bone. That's what she said. And then when you lift it, it'll do a simple tear like this. That's when you know the ribs are good, nice and good. And go ahead and cut through. And the last thing I want to show you guys is the smoke ring. So it'll go along right here. It shows that you've penetrated the meat very well. And that's the smoke ring. And these are the 3-2-1 ribs. Enjoy.